Hello friends and not yet friends, and welcome to episode number 1 of my small business diary series. I have notes. This series is basically going to be all about starting a small business. I'm starting a swimwear business, so it's going to be all about how to source manufacturers, branding, marketing, everything. And since I'm just starting out with my business, I'm going to take you guys with me on the journey, in the process. There are going to be vlogs, there are going to be behind the scenes, there's going to be numbers and details and all that stuff and everything that basically does not get shared online. And I'm really excited about it. I'm honestly quite stoked because when I started my swimwear business, when I was looking for manufacturers, when I was looking for information, it was just really hard for me to find things that were concrete, that gave me the information that I needed and wanted, and that allowed me to actually start my business successfully. So I'm here right now, from this moment onwards, along with you on your journey and ready to dive deep into the process of everything. And on today's Small Business Diaries episode, we are starting with branding, coming up with the name, the steps, everything, what you should be thinking about, what you should have ready diving into the manufacturing process, which is going to be episode number 2, sourcing manufacturers. So I know that everyone always has the question, where to find manufacturers. We are going to be discussing that in the next episode. So stay tuned if you want to stay up to date with every single episode that we're going to be doing, and through the process of me basically starting my swimwear brand and taking you with me behind the scenes. So stage 1, idea to reality. I know that we all have big dreams. I know that we all want to start this thing, but what is the reality? What is the reason behind why you want to start this business? What's the purpose of it? Because with every single business, there's kind of a different way to approach it. If you're starting this business mainly because you want to make a big income, you want to look for something scalable, you know, that is going to be sustainable in the long run, where maybe you can outsource a bunch of things. It's a different purpose than if you are solely going into business because you're like, I'm passionate about this and I would like to make money off of it, but also I'm okay with staying a small business if that is to be the case. Maybe this is going to be a more expensive brand, maybe this is going to be handmade. So there are 2 different business models that come into play when thinking about that, and they all have to do with the purpose. Like, it's fine if you're like, I want to make a bunch of money, and it's also fine if you're like, I want to do something that's directly tied into my purpose, and I'm more concerned about just doing things in the way that I want to do them, that feel good, that feel, you know, in line with everything that I want to do. Either of these are good, but it's good to take into consideration, because if you want to start something scalable, you might have to look at logistics, you know, how well optimizable it is, how big you can actually scale it realistically, examples of other brands that have scaled it, and in doing so, you will just get a clear overview of like the realistic expectation that you can have in scaling a business like this. Now, after that stage, you want to dive into client conceptualization. So basically, this is the point where you're going to think about who this business is going to be for. Are you solving your own problem? Are you your ideal client? Is someone else that you know your ideal client? Do you not know your ideal client? Also fine. But you kind of want to start to get an idea of who the person is that you want to start selling to, basically. And obviously this is kind of like up to interpretation, and that might change along the road because you never know who you're actually going to be attracting with your product, but you most definitely can know who you want to be targeting. So later down the line, you might want to check in and see like, who are we actually attracting, who's our target audience, who has been buying from us, and then redefine this. But initially you want to have a clear set idea of what it's going to look like. So for me, the kind of person that I am attracting is probably someone that likes to buy designer things, that doesn't want to buy a whole bunch of bikinis all the time, but rather wants to focus on having sustainable things that are gonna last them for a long time. They don't want to buy new things all the time. This is my problem. I don't want to fall into the trap of buying. I would rather have something good and keep that. And in doing so, I would love to buy something that maybe is more timeless and classic and versatile in some ways, you know. So the products that I am going to be creating are going to fall in line with what my ideal client is actually looking for and what I would actually be looking for as I'm kind of solving my own problem. There are people that do not mind paying a higher price for better quality, because obviously I'm going to be providing better quality with my business in this process. And altogether, I can definitely say, you know, they're into the whole Sophia Richie, like old money trend. Jacquemus is a big inspiration that I have for the brand itself. So I definitely also think that they would be buying from that and other designer brands, but not to the point where it's like tacky. It's more like a classy, elevated, elegant lifestyle, as well as them being interested in still remaining sexy, because I think that there's a trend, and this is another pain point, where to be elegant means that you fully have to cover up, that everything has to be, you know, covered. It all has to be like not very fitting. There can't be any skin showing. I would like to find the balance between elegance and, I guess, eroticism is what I would like to call it. So I'm solving those pain points there. I know who my ideal client is, and when you have a little bit of an idea like I do, you can write it out. I did. It can be very simple. You can even use ChatGPT to help you write out what your ideal client avatar is really like, or maybe even write it out for you. So you can put like, the person that I want to be targeting is into this and this and this and this. Can you write me an ideal client avatar? I love doing those things because it's like little hacks and tips and tricks. So once you have this, you're gonna go into brand conceptualization, because obviously in order to put together what the brand is going to look like, express, elevate, etc., you want to know who you're going to be targeting, because based on those key points, you can say, are they going to be into this? You know, you can curate it directly for them. Like, what kind of feeling is it going to have? Is it going to be organic? Is it going to be neutral colors? Is it going to be a lot of black? Is it going to be darker colors? Like, depending on what industry or what clientele you're really targeting, the look of your brand is going to change. Like something really modern and futuristic, it has a different clientele than something organic like cotton. Like, what are the things that those kinds of people value, and what do they love aesthetically? Based on those aesthetics, you'll go into Pinterest. You know, obviously now you have an idea. You can look at other brands that your ideal client might be consuming, take some ideas from that, and then you dive into, okay, let's put together a mood board, brand board, and map out what this brand is actually going to look and feel like. What kind of little touches does it have? Does it feel elegant, elevated? Does it feel more accessible, relatable? All of these different things come into play when you are thinking about your brand and with your ideal client in mind. Now we're gonna move on to stage number 4, which is going to be the name creation of your brand. And with your client in mind and your mood board in mind, now you want to find a name that's going to be both attractive to the client, hi Chi-Chi, and that is going to really speak to what your brand stands for. Again, think about those keywords. Organic, maybe eclectic, eccentric, or perhaps if you want to go more futuristic and modern, you're gonna have different names based on different vibes. And if you guys want me to go deeper into any of these points at any time, just comment down below. I'll be able to go into things at a deeper level. I can even respond to your comment, or I can create a whole separate video on the things that you're asking about if there's a lot of requests for it. So think about your client and customer in mind. For me, I have a whole list. If you can see over here, there's a long list of names that I came up with before I came up with my final name. I thought about things like additions, like do you want house of or studio, or you know, any additionals. If you're creating a brand like a label or anything like that, there might be additions that you want to add. What do they represent? What do they reflect? And how does that represent the brand identity that you want to uphold? I did also ask ChatGPT if I add this addition. So I was thinking about maison, atelier, studio, label, house of. What do those things represent? My brand is this. What should I add as an addition between all of these additions that I have now as a possibility? It's really good to have some feedback, and obviously at the end of the day, you're gonna have to make those decisions for yourself and decide based on what you think is best for your brand. But it's always nice to have a little bit of feedback, because ChatGPT is gonna come up with some factual elements that are actually gonna help you build your brand in a way that relies on some facts from the internet versus it just being you. But obviously, if you already have a good sense and feel of what you want your brand to describe, what you want it to be, how you want it to feel, then you can totally go off of your own intuition. I like to do both. So after you came up with the name, you're gonna come up with a logo. You can hire a brand designer, someone that creates logos. You can do it yourself. There's obviously multiple resources on Canva. Again, play into that mood board. Come into the logo creation with an idea in mind. You do not just want to go off and like double around and be like, oh, this and this and that. Why? Always come back to the why. Why are you creating something in this way? How are you creating it? What does it really mean for your brand? How does it reflect on what you want to emanate? There are even things like using caps or using lowercase. Like lowercase feels a lot more approachable, probably a lot more organic. Caps maybe feels a lot more elegant and emphasized and perhaps more modern and elevated, depending on obviously what font you're using. But those little things can really come into play. So I would think of every element, even in your logo creation, as a separate aspect. These things together just bring you to the point where you're like, okay, like now I have a solid base for what I'm going to create as a first product. And first products are like a whole other thing. I feel like it really takes thinking and thinking and thinking and playing into your mood board and like looking at things in the industry and coming up with ideas. And like, if you're creating a fashion brand or bikini line like myself, you will probably want to start drawing after you've created your logo, you have your brand identity. You're gonna be thinking about, okay, what does it look like when I now put these things into a product-based thing? What is my first product going to be? How's it going to be different from any other brands that I've seen before? And for me, I really loved to draw out things. So let me show you guys a couple of examples. So this is one of the designs that I actually am developing right now, which is really exciting. You guys are gonna see this, you know, not too long from now. Next video that I'm gonna make is actually gonna be me showing the sample. I am receiving the sample next week, which is super exciting. But as you can see, there are a lot of details in here. I mapped everything out, from, you know, what I wanted the end to look like to like, what can we do for the front? Do I want it to be high cut? Do I want it to be low cut? You might want to add a bunch more details based on whatever it is that you're creating and define this based on your own, you know, set of like desires. But for me, as someone that's creating a swimwear brand, I have put these things down. Then we're gonna go over to Canva. What I also did was I created a brand book. So since I wasn't doing any tech packs, I really wanted to make sure that I had a bunch of things ready for the manufacturer to take from. I sent them a bunch of videos with examples. I sent them like examples of how I wanted the things to be tied, how I wanted it to look, how I wanted it to feel. And based on that, they were able to create something that directly reflected my vision. Obviously, we're still gonna see that as my samples coming in next week. But based on what I've showed them, they should have a clear idea of what I want it to look like. I even gave custom measurements. I bought something similar to what I want to produce and I took measurements from it based on how long I wanted the straps to be. And you can obviously adjust those as you're going through the process. But these are the baseline things that you really want to have. So, as you can see on the brand book over here, I just put like design book with our logo. Let me up the brightness a little bit. And then I started to just map out things. So we have the design draft, a good clear overview of what we want. Here I added all those details, etc. Then I added design elements. So design elements are like how I wanted it to feel. Things like the cut on the leg, maybe an example of what I've seen in another creation that I saw before. So all of these things are really important to add so that the designer, the manufacturer, can get a clear feeling of what you actually want to create. So you want to give them as many details as possible while keeping it clear. So for me, I wrote out organic elements with a classy put together feel. The high leg bottoms give an element of eroticism and sensuality. Then I mapped out design elements again, and then I put concerns and fabrics, like what kind of fabrics we had to do, because those were still questions that I had. So in concerns, I listed a few things that I was concerned about, like lifting of the bikini bottom around the waist area, too much with fabric on the straps, so it's not as, you know, sexy and elegant anymore. Bottoms, not high cut enough for the hips to be accentuated. All of those things were concerns that I had, and I wrote them out so that I could send this to the manufacturer as well, and they could, you know, take these into consideration when creating. Then I added a couple of measurements. It's okay if you don't have these. They will probably be able to do these measurements themselves based on their experience if you are working with an experienced manufacturer, which I do recommend. But it's always good to give detailed measurements in order to be able to really showcase what you want and what you want it to look like. And then I added the colorways that I wanted to do. This is more for myself because I had to also deal with the fabric manufacturer, but it also does give my bikini manufacturer an idea of what I want everything to look and feel like. So then I picked some of the colors that we were looking at based on the fabric that we ended up choosing, based on the recommendation that we got from our manufacturer. And this was really everything that I put in my brand book. So once you have all of this, you can now send this over to your manufacturer that you found, that you've sourced, which we're gonna talk about in the next video on how to find and source your manufacturer. I hope that gave you a little bit of an insight into step one of starting your small business, especially specifically if you're also doing something like me, which is swimwear, or maybe if you're doing something like apparel, any other product business. Honestly, this relates to. Perhaps in the next episodes, it's gonna be more related to specific swimwear. Like for me, I will be talking about how I found a swimwear manufacturer, but I will also be talking about how I found a product manufacturer, etc. So depending on what project you're working on and what product you're creating, I will definitely be giving lots of tips and we can deep dive into this together. And I hope that you got a little bit more clarity on the first steps to starting your product-based business. I'm glad to be on this journey with you guys together. I hope that this video kind of helped you a little bit. Any questions that you have, comment them down below. Subscribe for more if you want to see more, and I will see you guys in the next one.